What's up, guys? I've been planning to make this video for a while now. I just basically finished up Anime Expo, finished my con crunching, keeping track of how I ended up getting this. And if you want to learn how to make this, this is the video. Probably not the best camera angles. I've never done any tutorial video ever. Kind of really wanted to cosplay Spidey Punk 2099 the minute I saw the design. I, believe it or not, never owned a 3D printer or a sewing machine cosplay, but it's always been via EVA foam and whatever like scrap I could find, and just putting it all together with a ton of like contact cement or hot glue. And at the time, there wasn't a option to be able to buy a jacket for Spidey Punk 2099. That cosplay wasn't even out. I had so many plans of getting the suit and making my own gloves. I might eventually go through those later on, but I was like, well, I'm pressed for time at the point that anime was pretty much a month away. So I was like, but I haven't wrapped the bottom half with foam, but that's because I wanted you guys to see that there are buckles and Velcro strip. Whole Velcro strip going down the middle here, and 2 clips right here, left and right. Bear with me, my voice is so messed up. Strips here, all glued, sewed them like to give them like that cool sewed looking effect. Same thing here, but this is all glue, just EVA foam faux leather. You can unscrew them. Yep, breaking. You can unscrew them and pack this in your trunk or wherever and not deal with the hassle of something potentially hitting one of these spikes and they're gone and they fly away. Loki pin. Shout out to the President Loki that I found at the con. He offered me this pin, 3D printed and all, super cool. Thought it'd be funny to wear it, especially because it's Spidey Punk, so it's like super anti-government and anarchy. And zipper, like strips here. I didn't put them on. I just got lazy because it was the last day of working it for the con. I wanted to go to sleep, so yeah. But anyway. Here's some of the stuff that you're going to need to make this. So first off, a sewing machine. I went with the Singer heavy duty sewing machine. You can find really good deals on those on Facebook Marketplace if you don't want to spend $200. I bought mine off Amazon. They have a refurbished option, which knocked off $50 off that $200 price tag, and it works practically brand new. Came with everything. No complaints yet. You need fabric scissors, you need heavy duty needles for leather, you need also lighter needles for silk, because if you're going to be lining your jacket like I did, thread. I used black and red thread, huge thing to have there. Heavy duty thread, please get like something that's either all purpose or heavy duty. It will be an awful time if you get something that's not for the right fabrics. Get the right pressure foot. I didn't really do that and didn't have too many issues just because I did the painter's tape method, where I just taped the bottom of my pressure foot. I don't know if that's actually a method or not, or if it even is valid, but I heard online somewhere that your pressure foot won't get caught or stuck to the faux leather, because that material, especially if you're in a humid area, can get stuck to your pressure foot and mess with how your fabric gets pushed through the machine. So it is probably worth it getting the pressure foot. So I would highly recommend doing that, not box cutter. Box cutter or a X-Acto knife. Get a cutting mat. And a ruler. A ruler or some sort of straight edge, but preferably a ruler. A ruler will help you so much. I'll try to narrate through what I've recorded and try to get everything in a decent timeline one by one. And yeah, let's go. So here's the part of the video where I'm going to be narrating. This is just me using a old crop military jacket that I had lying around, and setting it over some printer paper and tracing it out so that I can get my pattern. I really liked how it fit me, so I was like, this is awesome. But I inevitably used a Hot Topic vest and adjusted a couple of these patterns, but it came out great. Used the chalk to draw my outlines onto the leather,
Chalk is awesome, by the way. It eventually comes off if you need it to get off, and it outlines really well onto black, so who would have thought, you know? Just be sure to copy your left pattern over to your right pattern if you're having issues with how even things are, and use your fabric shears to cut it out and just mock it up a ton, so that way it feels and fits right. Here's some time-lapse sped-run footage of me working on my jacket with my Singer Heavy Duty. I haven't touched a sewing machine in my life, and I had never used it. I had only seen my mom use it before, but I was like, you know, let me try this out. Watch a ton of tutorial videos on how to set up the bobbin and how to properly, you know, get my string set up and my settings and, you know, the right needle and pressure foot. So once you get all that set up properly, you won't get too many issues of your stitches bunching up and having to reset everything, because that is a pain. And be sure to use a ton of your fabric clips or sewing needles so that you get a flat surface to sew on. That's like super huge. Can't stress that enough. Here's me wearing the jacket after lining it with the silk and putting the zipper on. I hadn't connected the edges on the left and right together. I was still working on that, but I was so stoked with how everything looked. Highly recommend looking up the Sailrite workbench tutorial video on a beginner's guide how to make a leather vest. Super huge. This guy holds your hand through the whole process and shows you some of the most difficult parts on making a vest, which is what we see right here. This was me folding the whole vest inside out so that I can hide all the seams inside of the vest and have invisible seams and make it look like it's super professionally made. It's super hard to fold things inside out when you're working on a crop vest, just because the holes that you're working with, I guess, for lack of a better term, are going to be a lot smaller. So pulling the pieces of the vest inside out through those holes are just almost nearly impossible, but stick to it, be careful. You know, pace yourself, don't rip anything, you'll be fine, just trust the process. Here's me using Mod Podge and some EVA foam to cut out the metallic details onto the jacket. I outlined those with more printer paper, just put it on top of the jacket, and I used Plaid FX's metallic paint to get that silver metal look. Plaid FX has some of the best acrylic paints out there. You'll get an awesome silver finish. I highly recommend them. Worth the money. Do it. I had already mocked up some red faux leather onto here and made those red stripes. Glued those on. I glued all of my details like the silver and those stripes with contact cement and crazy glue. Highly recommend, if you have a lot of crazy glue, just use crazy glue. And make sure your edges are super sealed with glue, because the edges on these details love to ride up, and you don't want to have anything hanging loose or flopping around. You want it to hug the jacket super well. So just glue your things thoroughly and let them dry thoroughly. You'll be fine. For the most part, nothing really came off from my jacket at all. I just had some edges come off here and there, but nothing a little bit of crazy glue and my cosplay first aid kit couldn't fix. But overall, looking at the jacket right now, and it's still in perfect condition. 2mm foam, highly recommend. It is super flexible, and if you want to make things pop more, you can layer those 2mm foam pieces together and get something a little more dynamic. I believe some of these pieces were with 6mm foam, so I can get a couple things layered properly and looking like it's popping out. So optional if you want to do that. I highly recommend doing it because it just adds an extra flair to your jacket that feels a little more authentic, and it's awesome. This next part, I used some printer paper. Again, taped it all together, mocked it on the jacket to get this super cool cowl that he has over the jacket, and got to tracing it on EVA foam and cutting it. Highly recommend doing some V-slits, I call them, where you just do a little V-shaped slit at the edges of the left and right shoulder and then gluing them together so that they curve over your shoulder more. It'll give a nice look.
Here I'm showing off how I wrapped the cowl in faux leather. I probably should have wrapped the bottom, but I wasn't too worried because most people wouldn't see it. I also made the collar out of EVA foam too, so it would just stand up and get the proper support. I also made a really cool leather piece to cover the collar and the back of it, because he has like this weird pyramid design thing on the back of his cowl that I wanted to imitate or emulate, and I sewed all the edges together like that so that it didn't just look like I cut it out. Got some 2mm EVA foam, glued it with contact cement, put it inside of the collar so that I could get that metallic orange thing going on. So again, Mod Podge, metallic orange acrylic paint, you're good. Outline the edges with red faux leather and you're solid. Over here I'm showing off, sorry I'm kind of speed running this, I didn't have too much footage, but over here I'm showing off how I used my bamboo slicer to slice off the rear spike from my helmet file and just shrunk it down. And I shrunk it down super small. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but just measure everything to make sure you get it right. And I glued it onto the shoulders of my cowl. Here it is. I left out a couple details, like me, for instance, cutting out those faux leather flaps on the shoulder pieces so that I could get those little tri-bar going on. Just be sure to, you know, mock it up again onto your shoulder and draw it out. Take your time. I sewed the edges again because I didn't want it to look like I just cut a piece of faux leather out and slapped it on there. Sewing the edges of everything together will make it look more like professionally done. I used googly eyes for the buttons because you could use actual buttons, but for me I had issues keeping them on or staying glued onto the jacket. Googly eyes are just a cheaper alternative. You can get a whole assorted pack at like Dollar Tree and then Mod Podge it and put silver paint over it and it will look like buttons. And I just glued them on and it's immaculate. I haven't had any issues with it and I think it still looks pretty awesome, especially with this Plaid Effects paint. But yeah, here's my last photo. I thought this photo was pretty cool, with Jake Bender and Adventure Time crew, you know, minus Finn. But yeah, this was really dope. I had fun making it. If you guys feel like it's overwhelming, don't be overwhelmed, just do it, try it out. I will have all of the links in the description. I made a Google Doc in a drive that you'll be able to check out for a list of all the stuff I used, and I will hopefully in the near future put out these patterns on some sort of Etsy page and you guys will be able to just download them and adjust them to your size. But for now, again, just mock everything up, make sure it looks super nice, and enjoy. Yeah, appreciate you guys watching. Peace.